To the show, Sharon.
Hi, Chris.
So how can we prevent loss from tearing a family apart? Because obviously it's a lot of strain, a lot of emotions involved.
Yeah, it's very difficult. Now, when people experience loss or grief or bereavement of any kind, they'll all be dealing with a huge amount of overwhelming and big feelings. And even though there's a recognised sort of grief cycle that everybody goes through, everyone will be experiencing grief in their own way. I think the most important thing to remember is to keep those channels of communication open. So keep talking. And, you know, in my experience, I think probably the hardest thing that families experience is the different ways in which people then react to them after they've experienced that loss. So, for example, it might be that people stop talking about that person that has died, or they avoid members of the family completely, and that's generally because they don't know what to say, or they're worried they might say something wrong. So instead of sort of just talking about, you know, talking to them anyway, they stop talking, which leads to feelings of isolation, or that person might feel as though, or particularly if it happens in families, that they don't care, or that they've forgotten about that person. So talking is really important, because then we don't sort of end up feeling those really strong feelings even more, and you know, having big fallouts in families as a result.
What advice would you give to maybe specifically parents who are experiencing
this?
It's
really hard. So I think for a parent who is going through loss, not only are they trying to support, if they've got other children, they're trying to support their children's feelings and emotions, but they're also trying to sort out and deal their own as well. So it can be very, very difficult. Again, keeping channels of communication open. There's some fantastic support groups out there specifically for parents. One that comes to mind at the moment is SANS, Stillbirth and Neonatal Death Society. They have fantastic little individual support groups and befrienders that, you know, parents can go along to. So they're talking to people who have experienced something similar. But the other thing to remember is that if two parents have experienced the death of a child, for example, just because they've experienced that same loss doesn't mean they're going to experience it in the same way. So again, you know, got to be talking, got to keep those channels of communication open, so that both of them can explain sort of how they feel, so there's no misunderstandings.
And what about siblings themselves, and if they've lost a
Oh, that can be really hard, can't it? I think for young people experiencing death and bereavement, it can feel unfair and unjust and cruel. And I think they struggle with feelings of sort of guilt sometimes. You know, perhaps if they haven't thought about that person for the day, they might feel very guilty, or, you know, even blame themselves sometimes because, you know, it was their sibling that is not here anymore, and they are. So there is lots of things, you know, that they can experience too. But we need to encourage young people to talk. We need to support them to talk. Some will talk very openly and readily. Others will find it much harder to talk, just like we do as adults. So it's about finding those creative avenues, I think, as well, to help them to be able to express themselves. So things, again, support groups, there are lots of them out there, and also giving them an opportunity maybe to create a memory box of all of the sort of special things that, you know, remind them of that special person, or create a collage of pictures, little montage. Or draw a picture or write a letter to them. But for me, it's just about, you know, talking, keeping that communication open, and sharing feelings. It's better to talk about it than bottle it up, because that's really unhealthy.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you so much, Sharon.
Pleasure.
And we'll see you again very soon.
Look forward to it, Chris.
Maybe our next MHD challenge, wherever that's
Oh yes, I look forward to that too.
Well, everyone, do